Can an Indian company get into serious trouble under the data privacy laws? Or is this just another compliance checkbox? We are discussing Europe's GDPR versus India's Digital Personal Data Protection Act. More importantly, which one has more teeth? Today I am joined by Mr. Sameer Abhyankar, Advocate on Record, Supreme Court of India, to decode one of the most relevant legal conversations today, GDPR versus DPDP. With deep experience in commercial disputes and regulatory matters, Sir helps us understand how these two frameworks differ and what that means in practice. Hi sir, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good too. So, are you ready to jump in?
Yeah.
So, as you know, GDPR is gold standard for data privacy everywhere in the world. Now that India has launched its own data protection law, that is Digital Personal Data Protection Act, how do they compare in practice?
So my view on that is obviously the Indian law is nascent. It's just come around and Europe has been implementing it since a while now, almost 10 years or 8 years or 9 years. That one way to look at it is we have a lot of experience that we can draw on from, and this act does do that to a great extent. Another way to look at it is that India has its own unique problems. Indian corporate environment has its own unique problems. So it's interesting to see how this law plays out, in the Indian sphere. And that is, in my view, the European law obviously is a more mature law. The Indian law, time will tell whether it's as mature as it ought to be.
Do you think India will enforce this as well as the Europe does?
I think India will enforce it for sure, given the genesis of this law, the reason why it came around. We are, as an economy competing in the world, we are bound to enforce it in as effective a manner as we can. Whether it enforces it very well, that's something that our experience will tell when time comes.
So from your experience, do you think GDPR is fundamentally stricter than DPDP, or it's just perceived that way?
See, I can see where that view comes from, that GDPR is fundamentally stricter. I mean, it's just down to the fact that it is a more voluminous law than the Indian law is. Indian law seems more lean and leaves a lot of room for interpretations and development further. The European law does go down to defining more, sort of leaves you a very small area to navigate within, and therefore does come across as stricter. Having said that, the DPDP, in my view, is not something to be taken lightly. There are things that one must be mindful of and one must implement in a proper manner so as to be compliant of this law for the company's own good.
So I asked you that question because GDPR looks more compliance driven and rights heavy, while DPDP looks much more of a business friendly law. So what is your take on that?
So I feel at the heart of both these laws is the fundamental right to privacy that a human being, a person has. Now, whether that emanates from the European Charter, which enshrines that right to privacy within itself, or whether it emanates from the judicially developed right to privacy as a fundamental right that we have in India, the objective of this act, we can't forget, is to protect privacy, right? With that in mind, it may so appear that the GDPR is more compliance heavy. The DPDP, according to me, is equally compliance. Compliance heavy is, I would say, an ominous sounding term. It shouldn't be like that. It requires compliance. DPDP requires probably as much compliance. And to judge it as something that is compliance light or business friendly in our current environment today, we don't want the law to be blamed as catering to corporate India again, right?
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be looked at like that.
Of course.
It's a law that enforces the rights of individuals to privacy by ensuring that people who deal with the data, private data of individuals, have certain requirements in law that sort of ensure that the privacy is not violated. The compliance is there. I don't think anyone should get the impression that it is a business friendly law and therefore it is compliance light and therefore one can get away with it. That should not be the impression that is conveyed, in my view.
Of course. So, when you talk about privacy being a fundamental right, you must have an idea that right to data protection is also a fundamental right for the European citizens.
Right.
Do you think India should also make an amendment to the fundamental rights and include right to data privacy given the environment we are living in?
Yeah. So, insofar as that's concerned, see, you're well aware there is a part 3 in our constitution which has a few core articles. Those, let's put it down to 3 core articles, are 14, 19 and 21.
Yeah.
As we have seen the law develop through starting with the 50s, 21 has been widened time and again, right? Right to life has been expanded in scope judicially to include a lot of things. So whether a constitutional amendment needs to be brought in to amend 21 to include a right to data privacy, I don't think so. I think our judicial system is robust enough, our precedents are strong enough to support the view that privacy of data is a fundamental right that can be brought within and has been and will be brought within the ambit of Article 21.
That's a very interesting take. We'd like to see what the judiciary says once DPDP comes into picture.
Yeah.
So, sir, in India, do you think companies take law seriously before enforcement begins?
Unfortunately, no, they don't. My personal view is they don't really feel the pinch until the shoe really bites, and sometimes it's too late when they feel that pinch. So I can give you an example what I mean to, and I'll say this, most companies are very much aware of this law today, but there is a substantial number, in my personal experience, and I'm sure you've also found that, I'd say put that number at about 30 to 40%, where people are oblivious to the consequences that can come from non-compliance of this act. I'll give you an example. This is a fairly big company that's there, promoter driven of course. So they are in the education sphere and they deal with students' data in online and offline mode, but obviously the act covers everything. So I can't tell you what a difficult conversation I've had with them in trying to convince them to become immediately compliant with this law and the steps that they need to take to comply with this law, because unfortunately their accountants and their advisors tell them that this is only an added expense. But I tell them that you're dealing with students and several students at that, and therefore you must, regardless of what you do, comply with this law.
So when we talk about children, it is at the core of every parent's worries that where their children's data is going.
Right.
So to look after that, the law has launched a beautiful Section 9 to the DPDP Act. Would you like to throw some light on the section?
Yeah, so Section 9, which speaks of the protection of data of children, has this concept of verifiable consent. And that, according to me, more than Section 9 has been given teeth by the rules that have been introduced. There is, I think, Rule 10 which deals with that, which also sort of defines, because otherwise Section 9 is the loose framework which says as to what you must do when dealing with data of minors. Section 10 actually defines as to the manner as to how you can obtain or you must obtain that verifiable consent. And that, according to me, is a very good step, because as a parent or otherwise, to protect a child's data, and for the simple reason that the child has no idea where his data is being used, is not in a position to take informed consent, to let someone buy, let a data fiduciary buy, or probably as is being done in Europe, to let a data controller buy by just, paying lip service to consent of guardian is not sufficient. What we have in our law, I feel, is good. There are more teeth to this concept of verifiable consent in our law.
That's actually wonderful. How do you think it is going to affect in situations where parents are sharing their own children's data to various AI tools as they're trending, things are in? So,
yeah, on that, I feel any kind of data fiduciary who uses, say, an app to morph children's pictures, for the purposes of that app, you have your filters and all those things, all of them will fall under the scope of this enactment, and they will have to comply when they are taking on data. But when we are concerned with things like these, according to me, you can only be so careful, and the law can only help you so far, right? If you share a child's picture with, say, an app like this, that data fiduciary will be bound by the requirements of this law and will comply and will be hauled up for breach. But we as parents, and again, this is my very personal view, we as parents ought to be careful ourselves as to what we are doing. So it is as much our responsibility, before we scream from rooftops about our rights under this act and the rights of our child under this act, we should be more careful as parents, as guardians of those rights. And it is then our duty to make sure that we don't make those rights vulnerable.
Right. This reminds me of the age-old saying, God helps those who help themselves. So
True.
law also helps those who help themselves.
Always and only. True.
So let's take you to the courtroom halls.
Yeah.
As you know, the deadline for the compliance is 2027 May.
Right.
How do you think are the courtrooms going to look like after that? Penalties coming in heavily?
Heavily, yeah, penalties are coming in. I think there would be very few instances of penalizing sections in our country which have been enacted and not implemented. So those would be the rare exceptions. So you can imagine implementation of the penal section for sure. And there is ample scope in this enactment, because there is, in my view as a lawyer, there is some amount of ambiguity, especially in the general obligations of data fiduciary. There is a certain amount of ambiguity that is going to be, used to impose penalties.
There's a popular saying, the power of a lawyer is in the law being ambiguous.
Well, I don't know about power, but there's certainly opportunity. Yeah.
That's true. So how soon can we see the data protection laws on Mondays and Fridays in court?
Yeah, well, that can happen very soon. So one aspect of that also is our propensity and the ease that is available to us in our system of challenging the statute. So as lawyers, a lot of times what you do is, when there is a penalty provision that doesn't, that on the face of it at least looks a little arbitrary, you end up challenging the provision itself. And that could happen. And there are challenges pending, of course, we know that. But when the penalties come in, that is going to bring more challenges and more litigations.
So we talked about Mondays and Fridays. Those are the admission days in the Supreme Court of India. So from this conversation, it is clear that the law may exist, but the real impact will come on the consistency of it being imposed, enforced, and the people actually looking into their rights as much as their duties towards the law. So we have spoken about data privacy laws, but globally there is a shift beyond data privacy laws. Like the European Union has already moved towards the AI Act, which is regulating AI systems on the basis of the risk they're posing to the data.
Right.
So do you think India is heading in that direction as well?
It must eventually. I think the only difference is a matter of time, because we're all aware. We were speaking about the Data Protection Act itself. That itself came to India about, 10 years late, right? AI India, I think, is, notwithstanding all the AI summit, etc., India is 10, 12 years behind in terms of adoption and use of AI. A lot of people, a lot of professions use it today, but I think we're still behind. So if globally things are moving towards better and greater regulation of AI, then there is no way India can escape that. India will also eventually have to move towards that, and we will.
But like Data Protection Act came in 2023, but we've been heavily relying on the IT Act before that.
Right.
So do you think instead of launching a new AI Act, India is going to rely on DPDP Act for now?
No, I am not very sure, and that is something, honestly, the technical people may be able to answer better. I am not very sure that all aspects of what AI is or has become now can be sufficiently regulated by the Data Protection Act. It is not merely aspects of data privacy that we must be concerned about when we are dealing with AI. There are many more aspects because personal data is just one part of it, right? There are many more aspects of data and many more aspects of a lot of things that we are not very cognizant about right now, or we don't have regulation for right now, and the IT Act and DPDP Act, in my view, should not cater to that purpose completely, at least.
So how soon do you think we will have an AI statute?
Sooner the better, I feel. Sooner the better. I really can't put a number on it, but I think right now the phase we are in is where we are all very excited about AI in terms of using it. Of course, the government push is also towards facilitating AI. I think we are moving in a direction where we are greater players in the AI economy. So it's India's AI push right now, according to me, is not very consumer focused. It is industry focused. It is to serve the requirements of the booming AI industry across the world. That is where we strive to be. Of course, we are also a great market for AI. I mean, our greatest strength today is that we are a great, massive, huge market that no one can ignore. So we will eventually come to regulation. We will eventually come to making more and more laws to govern all these things.
So with the technology horses galloping, there will be a lot more conversation on AI, but that we are going to do in the next conversation. Here, let's understand the practical impact of privacy. So sir, if you were a startup company using user data today, should you already be cautious?
Yes. My answer straight away is yes, I should be cautious. There is a great amount of awareness about this whole thing, as is required. There is a compliance requirement. So as a startup founder or as a company doing any sort of business dealing with any amount of data, I should be cautious.
3 months into 2026, looking at May 2027, what is one tip you would like to give to the startups and companies who have not started their compliance journey so far?
Start it right away. There's no emphasizing or gainsaying the importance of this. Start it right away.
Now we are going to have a quick rapid fire, a few short questions. Are you ready?
Yeah. They don't have to be yes or no, do they?
No.
Okay.
You can answer in your comfort.
Okay.
So sir, GDPR or DPDP, which is stricter?
They're equally strict. One shouldn't overlook the other. We are in India, we should take DPDP extremely seriously and consider that the strictest.
Okay. What is the biggest mistake companies are doing with data today?
Not taking it seriously enough.
One thing businesses are underestimating about the DPDP right now?
The penalties.
About penalties. Will we see major penalties in the coming 2-3 years?
Yes, we will. We are looking at very high quantums of penalties. Of course, they will be there. But we have to see that for every violation of the DPDP Act, there is a 50 crore penalty also, right? Then, as I was mentioning in the earlier part of our talk, there are ambiguities that are there for which you can be hauled up seriously. So reasonable safeguards is so undefined a term, according to me, is that every company must err on the side of caution and adopt the best practices wherever available, globally or otherwise.
Okay. Next question is, AI statute in India closer than we think or still far away?
Still far away. Should be closer, but still far away.
So we see that data privacy is no longer a legal issue. It's a business risk. And GDPR or DPDP, the question is not whether the law exists. The real question is, are you ready when it starts being enforced?
True.
So thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
We've had a
Thank you,
wonderful
Preeti.
conversation.
Yeah. Pleasure's mine. Thank you.